Have you ever eaten all day and still felt like something was missing? Like maybe your stomach wasn't empty, but you still felt tired, disconnected, or not quite cared for? If you have ever felt that way, you are definitely not alone. Welcome back to Holistic Health for Women of Color podcast, where we talk about wellness in a way that feels real, supportive, and connected to our lived experience. This is a space where health is not separated from culture, stress, identity, or the everyday realities we carry. I am Donna Williams, certified holistic health coach and founder of holisticbphealth.com. And I'm here to help you care for your health with more clarity, more compassion, and no shame. And today we're talking about something that I think can completely shift the way we think about food and self-care. Today's question is, are you feeding yourself or are you nourishing yourself? It's a holistic health conversation for women of color because those two things are not always the same. A lot of us have learned to focus on food through the lens of rules, numbers, and what we should or should not eat. We have been taught to think about calories, carbs, protein, sugar, sodium, and labels. And while those things can matter, they are not the full story. Food is not just nutrients. Food is also comfort. It's memory, it's identity, it's culture, it's routine, it's stress, it's survival. And sometimes it's one of the few ways we try to care for ourselves in the middle of a very full life. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the difference between nutrition and nourishment and why that difference matters, especially for women of color, and how to start eating in a way that supports your health without disconnecting you from yourself or your roots. So let's start here. Are you feeding yourself or nourishing yourself? It's a holistic health conversation for women of color. Nutrition and nourishment are connected, but they are not identical. Nutrition is the measurable part of food. It's the science. It's the protein, fiber, fats, vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients your body needs to function. Nutrition is what helps regulate blood pressure, support hormones, build muscles, protect the heart, fuel the brain, and keep the body going. And let me say this clearly. Nutrition matters. It matters if you want more steady energy. It matters if you are trying to support your heart health. It matters if you are managing blood pressure, blood sugar, inflammation, or fatigue. It matters if you want to age well and feel well in your body. Nutrition is foundational. But here's the part we don't talk about enough. You can eat foods that look healthy on paper and still feel deeply, deeply undernourished. You can drink the smoothie, eat the salad, hit the protein goal, take the supplements, and still end the day feeling depleted. Why? Why is that? Because nourishment is different. Nourishment is about how food cares for the whole person, your whole being, not just the physical body. Nourishment includes the emotional experience of eating, the sensory experience, the cultural connection, the comfort, the satisfaction, the feeling of being grounded enough to receive the meal. It's the difference between grabbing something while answering emails, and sitting down for even 10 quiet minutes with food that actually settles you. It's the difference between eating something because you think you should and eating something that supports your health and also feels familiar, pleasurable, and sustaining. It's the difference between being full and feeling fed. And I think this matters in a particular way for women of color because so many of us have been taught to keep going no matter what, to push through exhaustion, to ignore our needs, to care for everybody else first, to survive stress as if that is just normal. And you know it's not. To be strong even when what we really need is softness, support, and rest. So when it comes to food, many of us eat in the same way we live, quickly, efficiently, while multitasking, while stressed, while disconnected from our bodies. Sometimes we eat standing up. We eat in the car. We eat at our desk. I never did that. I always stepped away when I was working in banking, corporate banking. When it was lunchtime, I was not eating at my desk. I stepped away to somewhere else. And it made the day shorter, and it gave me a much better feeling of relaxation. You know, it reduced the stress, just stepping away from the phone, the desk, the whole environment. Sometimes we skip meals and then overcompensate later. We try to be good. We try to do what the wellness world say is right. And still we do not feel restored. That's because food is being consumed, but care is not always being received. And that is such an important distinction. Let me repeat that again. That's because food is being consumed. You're just eating the food. But care is not always being received. You're not being cared for within your mind. And that is such an important distinction. Our body can take in calories and nutrients while the nervous system still feels overwhelmed. A meal can check every health box and still leave you emotionally unsatisfied. A perfect balanced snack can fuel you physically but do nothing to help you feel grounded, connected, or even at ease. That doesn't mean nutrition is not important. It just means nutrition alone is not enough. Let's make this practical. What does nourishment actually look like in daily life? Sometimes it looks like the meal itself. And sometimes it looks like the way you experience the meal. For example, a bowl of beans, rice, sautéed greens, and roasted sweet potato can be nutritionally balanced. It can have fiber, minerals, complex carbohydrates, plant compounds, and steady energy. But nourishment is what happens when that meal also reminds you of home. When it's seasoned in a way that feels familiar. When you sit down long enough to taste it. When your shoulders drop a little after the first few bites because the flavor and your taste bud burst with the enjoyment of the taste of the food on your tongue. When your body gets the message, I am being cared for right now. That is nourishment. And let's be honest, sometimes a protein bar is what's available. Sometimes convenience is necessary. Sometimes you're doing the best you can with the time, money, and energy you have. There's no shame in that. No. This conversation is not about perfection. It's about awareness. It's about asking, where can I create even a little more care in the way I feed myself? So here are a few ways to begin bringing nutrition and nourishment together. First, slow down when you can. I know that sounds simple, but it matters. You do not need an hour-long meal ritual every day, but even one deep breath before eating can help. Even sitting down instead of standing at the kitchen counter can help. Even tasting your food instead of rushing through it can help. When we slow down, we make it easier for the body to digest, easier for the mind to register satisfaction, and easier for ourselves to feel present. Second, ask yourself what kind of hunger you're feeling. Sometimes you're physically hungry, yes, and sometimes you're just mentally drained. Sometimes you need comfort. Sometimes you need water. Sometimes you need a break. Sometimes you need connection. That question is powerful. What do I really need right now? Not to judge yourself, not to talk yourself out of eating, but to better understand what is going on inside you. Because nourishment includes honesty. Third, make healthy food feel like care, not punishment. This is a big one. For so many women, healthy eating has been framed as restriction, control, guilt, or discipline. But if every meal feels like a correction, a chore, or a reminder that you're doing something wrong, it becomes much harder to build a peaceful relationship with food. And we have to have a peaceful relationship with food. So try shifting the question from what should I cut out to what would help me feel supported. Maybe, just maybe, that means adding greens to a dish you already love. Maybe it means cooking with more herbs and spices instead of relying on highly processed options. Maybe, just maybe, it means making breakfast more balanced so your energy feels steadier later in the day. Or maybe it means choosing foods that love your heart back. That is a gentler, more sustainable path, don't you think? Fourth, I want you to honor your culture instead of abandoning it. This one is so important. Too often, healthy eating is presented in a way that feels disconnected from our traditions, our flavors, and our lived reality. We're given advice that may be technically sound but culturally empty. It doesn't resonate with us. And when that happens, wellness starts to feel like assimilation instead of care. But your culture is not the problem. Remember that. Your culture is not the problem. Your food traditions are not the problem. Flavor is not the problem. In many cases, our traditional foodways hold deep wisdom. The beans, greens, herb, spice, grains, stews, the root vegetables, the fermented foods, broths, and plant-forward meals that nourished generations before wellness became an industry. Now, yes, sometimes there is room to adjust how often certain foods are eaten or how they are prepared, especially when supporting blood pressure or heart health. But adjustment is not erasure. Adjustment should not be erasure. You do not have to abandon your culture to eat well. No. You do not have to strip the joy out of your food to support your health. That doesn't make any sense. That don't make any sense. You do not have to choose between your heritage and your healing. You can build meals that support your body and still taste like home. That is so powerful. That is sustainable. And for many of us, that is deeply, deeply healing. Fifth, remember that nourishment goes beyond the plate. Food matters, yes, but nourishment is also rest. It is hydration, it is movement, it is laughter, it is spiritual grounding. It is time in nature, it is boundaries, it is community, it is being able to exhale. If your meals are nutritious but your life is constantly running on stress, your body may still feel depleted. So part of nourishment is asking, where else am I starving? Am I starving for rest, for quiet, for help, for pleasure, for connection, for ease? That question can open so much, because sometimes the answer is not just food. Sometimes the answer is support. Just support. And finally, create small rituals around food. Not because everything has to be fancy. Not because you need more work, but because ritual helps turn an ordinary act into a meaningful one. Maybe your ritual is lighting a candle before dinner. Maybe it's saying a prayer. Maybe it's putting your phone down for the first 5 minutes of the meal. Maybe it's using your favorite plate. I do that. I have a favorite plate. I love the color of it. Maybe it's playing music while you cook. I love that. Maybe it's making one traditional dish each week that reconnects you to your family, your ancestry, or your joy. These things may seem small, but they matter. They tell your body, this is not just, this is not just another task. This is care. This is a moment to receive. This is nourishment. So if you take nothing else from today's episode, take this. Nourishment is essential, but nourishment is not what makes healthy eating feel whole. Nutrition gives the body what it needs to function. Nutrition gives the self what it needs to feel supported. And when you bring those two together, food becomes more than fuel. It becomes a way of tending to your health without disconnecting from your humanity. It becomes a way of supporting your heart, your energy, your emotions, and your identity at the same time. It becomes a practice of self-respect, and that matters, especially in a world that often asks women of color to give so much, carry so much, and keep going no matter how empty we feel. You deserve more than survival meals. You deserve more than rushed bites and wellness rules that leave no room for joy. You deserve food that supports your body and reminds you that you are worthy. You are worth caring for. So the next time you eat, I want you to pause and ask yourself, am I just feeding myself right now? Am I just feeding myself right now? Or am I nourishing myself? And remember, there is no shame in the answer, only information. Only an invitation to care for yourself a little more deeply. Maybe nourishment starts with one slower meal. Maybe it starts with adding one colorful whole food to your plate. Maybe it starts with seasoning your food in a way that feels like home. Maybe it starts with sitting down. Maybe it starts with letting healthy eating become supportive instead of stressful. And if you want help with that, I'd love to invite you to my free 5-day email series, Eating Well for Less. It includes budget-friendly strategies to eat heart-healthy, whole foods without spending a fortune and without abandoning your culture. I'll provide the show notes here and on my website page. Because eating well should be accessible. It should be practical. And it should still feel like you. I want to thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this episode, Are You Feeding Yourself or Nourishing Yourself? A holistic health conversation for women of color spoke to you, share it with a friend, a sister, or someone in your circle who may need this reminder too. So, until next time, take good care of yourself. And remember, your health journey does not have to disconnect you from your roots. It can bring you home to yourself. See you soon.